This might be a long one, so grab a drink, grab a snack, grab some Bundaberg. So I graduated nursing school in 2017, and way before then I wanted to be a travel nurse. Unlike a lot of nurses nowadays, after the COVID pandemic, most people at least think about being a travel nurse. After my 2 years of experience in mother, baby, postpartum nursery, I started travel nursing in 2019. So I'm hitting my 5 years experience of being a travel nurse. So here are my thoughts, pros, cons, and just some background information about what it's like to be a travel nurse. My husband's also a travel nurse, Sam. He's a med-surg telemetry travel nurse, so we've been doing it the full time together, so I'm gonna put some of his perspective in here as well as being med-surg telemetry. So travel nursing has really changed our lives over the past 5 years, and it basically feels like we've been on a 5-year vacation, but with anything good comes some cons, so let's talk about it all. So let's start off with the job in general. Whenever you take a job as a travel nurse, you really should expect the worst of the worst, because for a hospital to pay for a travel nurse, because it is a lot of money, they have to be in a really dire need. So you're staffing the most understaffed units in the entire country. So expect really high nurse to patient ratios, a really toxic work environment, mean nurses that you work with, and just hospitals that aren't great all around. But I have had some really great experiences through my years of travel nursing. So they're really not all that bad. But this also means because you are there in a dire need, the second that they don't need you, your contract will be dropped. I've had contracts dropped on the way to a different city to work the job. I've also had contracts dropped mid-contract. So really a contract's not really like legally abiding contract. They can drop you at any time, and technically you can quit at any time as well. I also have this unique specialty, pretty much one of the only ones in the entire nursing field that really there's not much of a shortage in this specialty, because I am a mother, baby, women's care nurse. That means that there really has to be a dire need for a travel nurse. For example, like if a lot of nurses go on maternity leave, if the hospital is just really that bad that nurses don't want to work on that unit. So really contracts for me specifically in my specialty are not as common as, say, Sam's specialty, which is med-surg telemetry. So that makes finding a job kind of hard on my end, but easy on his. Even though my specialty is pretty sought out in the nursing field, it does come with a good bit of challenges, and I'm the first one to say that I am still burnt out, or I have been burnt out as a mother-baby nurse. For one, I do work night shift, so is there really any explanation there? Two, a lot of my career was during the COVID pandemic. Do I really need to say more on top of that? And really what a lot of people know is that even though COVID didn't really affect mother, baby, or like young women in general, like COVID wise, it has caused a lot of health problems in the maternity field. So since COVID, there's been a lot more rates of preterm births, hemorrhages, preeclampsia, and I can just name a ton of other things that has happened since the COVID pandemic. And it has proven that COVID has caused the general population as a whole to become more sick. So really, patients are a lot more sicker even in my specialty, babies as well. So with that aside, that's really not what we're talking about. That has caused a lot of burnout, especially with nurses in general, and for no exception, travel nurses. I feel like my burnout started it definitely hit right when COVID hit for some reason. I was working in a really large hospital. They do take sicker patients to begin with. So my burnout was already starting to crash, and then COVID hit. That changed everything we know about healthcare. And then I kind of hit my quarter life crisis. I feel like that's a true thing. Like once you hit 25 to 28, even a little bit before and after, a lot of people do experience a quarter life crisis, because this is the time in people's lives when, things are changing. You're either getting a new job, you're starting a family, you're settling down somewhere, and then that brings a lot of questions like, what am I doing with my life? And me, that was no exception. I even quit travel nursing for 6 months, started a business, which I love and I still do, but part of me thinks that maybe it was just a quarter life crisis. But now I'm feeling a lot better. Something over the past 12 months I've just been feeling like myself lately. Like, I love nursing again, I love my specialty, and I'm just very thankful for that. So that's really about burnout in general between nurses, but travel nursing is its own little beast. So let's talk more about that. With travel nursing, you're expected to jump right into a new job with only 1 to about 3 days of orientation on your unit in your hospital. So it's really imperative that you get your experience in your specialty at least 2 years before you start traveling. So you get a job as a staff nurse, you learn how to be a nurse, and then after about 2 years, you can jump into travel nursing. Once you get there, you're learning either a new charting system, the unit policies, the hospital policies, and such. So it's really imperative that you have the foundation of being a nurse before you start. With the charting systems, there's a handful of charting systems that most hospital uses. So now that we've hit our 5-year mark, I feel like me and Sam have both learned most of them. So that's really not much of a challenge for us anymore. The first few years though, yes, you have to learn so many different charting systems if you're going to be doing this for a few years. One thing that really keeps me doing travel nursing is all the free time you have. So when you're just a nurse in general, every nurse has this. If you work full time, you're only required 3 shifts a week. Yes, they are 12-hour shifts and they're very long, but you get to be off for 4 days. But if you work night shift, you kind of lose a day because you have to sleep the day you're off. Anyway, you get so much free time to begin with. But as a travel nurse, most contracts are 3 months at a time, and then you can take as much time off you want between contracts. The most I've ever taken off is 6 months, which I feel like is kind of pushing it a little bit because a lot of hospitals do want recent travel nursing experience for them to offer you the job. So 6 months I think is max. Technically you can do it for up to a year, but like I said, that's kind of pushing it. Having as much time off as I need, as much time off as I want, has allowed us to travel the world. I visited over 20 countries, nearly half of the United States. So that is something I really value in the job that I do. And that's what you mostly see on this channel. A huge downside of being a travel nurse is the loneliness. So whenever you take a contract, you're miles and miles away from your family and friends. So you're basically there all alone, although I travel with my husband. That's a big perk of us traveling together, but most travel nurses do not have someone to travel with. When you're gone months and months at a time, we try to come home and do visit everybody, but over time you tend to notice that your relationships do dwindle a little bit. Even though it's kind of subtle, it's still like not the same as it was, you know what I mean? But while we're on assignment, we do try to meet new people. He's a lot better at that than I am. He just makes friends a lot easier than I do. But we've really met some cool people around the world, and even on social media, we've met some of you, and we're really thankful for those relationships because this is just truly a lonely job because you're not with your family and friends for months at a time. So let's talk about money. Travel nursing in general, especially during the pandemic, had this reputation about we make so much money. And when you compare it to a staff nurse, we do, but let's talk about the behind the scenes of costs and all the other things that travel nurses have to put up with. So let's get into it. So a background of how our pay works. We receive non-tax stipends, which means when we travel away from our home, we receive a housing stipend, meals and incidentals, and oftentimes travel pay to get to that assignment. In order to qualify for those to be non-taxed, you have to be paying housing at your place of home. There are contracts and local contracts where these will be taxed, so you really don't have to pay for housing back home. But if you take these non-tax stipends, you're paying for double the housing, double the cost of living technically. Think of it like a business trip. If you travel for your job to another city, your company is going to pay for your hotel and your meals while you're there and other costs. Same thing for us, except our contracts are months long. We do have to maintain our citizenship in our state of residence. The other portion of our travel is what we actually work, so our hourly pay. That money is taxed, so just like anybody else working. So we get the tax pay as well as the non-tax pay. COVID really did cause a spike in pay at the time, but rates have since stabilized to pretty much pre-pandemic, and especially with the high cost of living nowadays, kind of hard to justify being a travel nurse when you take everything into consideration. I think we have it a bit easier because we both work and both get the pay, But if we were to do it solo, I'm not sure that it would come out, like if we would come out ahead or even it'd be worth doing. On top of the usual cost of living that everyone else has to deal with, finding short-term housing as a travel nurse is just really difficult. So there seems to be a premium whenever you try to find a house as a travel nurse for only 3 months or even 6 months. It seems to be more costly versus if you were to just move somewhere and sign a 1-year lease. I'm not sure why that is. I guess because they have to keep finding tenants after you're gone. So I guess it kind of makes sense, but that's another kind of con to travel nursing. And if you travel with a pet, that just adds more fees to it, harder to find housing because not every place lets you have a pet. So yeah, those are some cons about housing. I think housing is easily the most difficult thing as a travel nurse. Oftentimes, travel nurses, us included, you may have to stay in multiple houses during your contract. This contract, for instance, it's been 6 months, so when we first got here, we had to live in a hotel for about 2 weeks. Then we moved to a place that we're in now. And then actually in 2 weeks, we have to move to a different house for a month and a half or so because this place is not going to be, the owners are moving back in basically. So it's really common for travel nurses to have to either live in hotels, move multiple times, and whatever. One pro and con of travel nursing I experienced, and I really didn't expect for it to hit this hard, is whenever you move to a place for several months, you really get the idea of what that place is truly like. So you meet new people, you make new routines, you see these beautiful places, and then when it's time to leave, you get like this deep sadness, like almost a part of your heart is left in that place. That's why if you've watched us for several years at a time, you may notice that we've had revisited places that we've traveled to before. It's because just a piece of your heart is left there. And to be honest, I can see us living in multiple places that we've traveled to for a long time, and that probably will be the plan at some point, but not anytime soon. I can't tell you how many times we were like leaving the place, either by car or plane, and I've like just cried because I was sad to leave. But that's just the nature of the job. So those are really my thoughts of travel nursing after 5 years, pros, cons, and everything in between. I hope you liked this video, and I really do plan on making more videos about travel nursing now that I don't feel so burned out about it. It's my dog. So leave a comment below on videos you may want to hear me talk about travel nursing, and click that subscribe button to see more videos about the topic and about our travels all around.